The British band The Cult would burst onto the scene in the mid-80s with a string of successful records, including Love, Electric, and 1989's Sonic Temple. The two constants in the band's lineup has always been frontman Ian Astbury and guitarist Billy Duffy, who were also the principal songwriters. But as the 90s would roll around, The Cult were in for a rude awakening. Their first record of the decade, 1991's Ceremony, would be released at possibly the worst time in music history, as music was undergoing a massive shift with alternative rock becoming more popular. Couple this with the fact that September of 1991 had some of the biggest album releases in history, and the album was bound to get lost. In that month, you had Red Hot Chili Peppers release Blood Sugar Sex Magik, Nirvana put out Nevermind, Guns N' Roses had their epic double album, and then the previous month you had Pearl Jam's 10 come out and Metallica's Black Album, to name a few. The Cult's Ceremony also represented a stylistic shift for the group, as Astbury and Duffy were also butting heads over musical direction of the band, so the record represented a compromise. The album ultimately peaked at number 24 on the album charts in America and would go on to become certified gold, selling 500,000 copies. But of course, it didn't do as well commercially as their past efforts. Also hampering the band at this time was a $61 million lawsuit that they were involved with over the cover art for Ceremony. The family of the boy on the album Ceremony would sue the Cult, claiming that they never had permission to use the photo. However, the band claimed they went through the appropriate legal avenues to get the photo. The Cult would return in 1994 with their self-titled album that was more influenced by alternative rock at that time, but it sold even worse than Ceremony, not even making it into the top 40, and it ultimately led to the band breaking up. The Cult would fall apart while they were on tour in South America in the mid-90s, with Billy Duffy telling Louder Sound, "We broke up in 1995. That was a real breakup. We were in South America, and Ian just split. I think the problem was that neither of us were really comfortable with success. We're just not cut out for being pop stars." The rest of the tour dates would be scrapped. Also contributing to the decision to take a break was Astbury's struggles with substance abuse, his marriage falling apart, and the changing musical scene. Astbury would remark to one interviewer how he didn't like how the rock and roll frontman persona had drastically changed in the 90s, recalling, "Look how they dress. They don't dress like peacocks. Their music didn't celebrate sexuality." It was during that time apart in the mid-90s, both Astbury and Duffy would play in separate musical groups, but it would be the former Guns N' Roses and Cult drummer Matt Sorum who instigated a reunion by the end of the 90s. Sorum had joined the Cult during their Sonic Temple tour days, and he soon departed to join Guns N' Roses to help them make their Use Your Illusion records, and he also toured the albums as well. He had been fired by frontman Axl Rose in 1997, and it was one night in the late 90s he was sitting on his couch, watching TV when he turned on Jay Leno's Tonight Show and saw Buck Cherry performing. He would call up Billy Duffy, and according to his autobiography, Double Talk and Jive, he'd say, "Billy, I just saw a band on TV, and they're a watered-down poor man's version of the Cult. I think rock and roll could be coming back." The musicians would talk about their long-standing issues and what they were doing these days, and Sorum would propose that they get back together, put out a press release, and book a tour. Duffy was into the idea, as was Ian Astbury, and they soon enlisted bassist Martin Lenoble, and the Cult were now back, and they booked a sold-out theater tour across America. The success of the band's reunion tour would result in record labels showing up to their gigs and making offers, one of which was Atlantic Records, who offered them a whopping $1 million advance. That was the most money the Cult had ever been offered in their career. Sorum's last stint with the Cult didn't see him play on any of their studio recordings, and he was basically a hired gun, so he wasn't making a lot of money. But this time around, he was made a partner, and he stood to make a lot of money as part of the reunion. The band would assemble and began working on their long-awaited comeback album that was tentatively titled Bring Me the Head of Dave Grohl. The album title was actually in reference to an interview that Foo Fighters frontman Dave Grohl had given, where he badmouthed the Cult. Grohl would remark how he once went to a show by the Cult and it made him want to put a gun to his head. But as the band began to work on writing material for their upcoming album, there already was tension in the studio. Bassist Martin Lenoble wanted to contribute song ideas, and he was quickly met with resistance. Sorum would recall in his book, "Billy had come up with a bunch of riffs, and then we began rehearsing. But then one day when our bassist Martin Lenoble said something like, 'What do you think about trying this?' Billy just stared at him without batting an eyelid and said, 'Ian and I write the songs. You just play your bass and I'll give you the ideas.' Each time we wrote songs, it was the same story. Eventually, Lenoble would leave the band and he would be replaced by Chris Wise. The band would enlist Sonic Temple producer Bob Rock, but the sessions would drag on and prove to be costly for the band. It was at one point they relocated to Hawaii to work at Rock's studio, which was perched on top of a hill overlooking the ocean. The band would spend nearly $750,000 on their long-awaited comeback album, leaving not that much money for the members. The Cult's comeback album titled Beyond Good and Evil would be released in June of 2001, and the tour to support the record didn't get off to a good start. According to Sorum, both Duffy and Astbury didn't want to do press for the album, and they didn't have a good attitude on the road. Despite the internal problems though, attendance was reasonably good at their shows, and they landed a pretty big opening spot touring with Aerosmith. It was ahead of the first gig with Aerosmith though, problems creeped up once again when Aerosmith's manager told the Cult's members not to run on the ramps that went from the stage out into the audience with an enormous hand at the end of it. Astbury ignored the rule, and on the first song into their set, he ran up the ramp to the hand and started jumping on it. It was soon after the Cult got off the stage they were fired from the tour by Aerosmith's manager. Sorum, however, would smooth things over when he went directly to Steven Tyler's dressing room and told him that because Ian was English, he didn't understand what a ramp was. The drummer would write in his book, and I quote, "I was so sick of him referring to Astbury. Every time we had an opportunity to go big, he would f*** it up. He was such a dark cloud hanging over us, and with each gig, he just got more and more sulky. The thing is, Ian could have been great if he had just stopped destroying himself and singing about horses and butterflies. If only he had written lyrics people could understand in America." As the tour wore on, Astbury grew more out of shape, and with the 9/11 attacks, the band's European tour would be cancelled. It was in November of 2001 Ian was interviewed, and the interviewer asked him what was next for the Cult, and he bluntly responded saying, "We're burnt." The band soon lost a recording deal with Atlantic, and the Cult split up once again. Sorum left the reunion with a bad taste in his mouth as he was owed about $140,000 according to his book, and he seemed to not get the money until years later. Astbury has been pretty blunt about his distaste for Beyond Good and Evil and the making of the album, saying it was too overproduced. The Cult would, however, reunite minus Sorum in 2006 and are still together to this day and have put out several more albums since. Sorum, meanwhile, would found the supergroup Velvet Revolver. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you have suggestions for topics you'd like to see me cover on my channel, use the link in the description box below. Take care.